He's probably thinking about other bitches. Bro, I think England might have won a fucking World Cup if Jack Wilshere wouldn't have had all those injuries. I don't know if it's just me, but I hate the international break. Like, especially this first one every season. You get a few matches into the season, you're starting to get the vibes going, you're starting to feel excited, and then now we gotta watch Cyprus versus Scotland, Spain versus Georgia, Croatia and Latvia. I mean, this is rough, man. Who watches this? Who watches this shit, man? I do sometimes. I do sometimes. I'll be honest. But damn, man, I don't know. The qualifiers thing, I just can't get. I can't get behind it. I can't speak English either, apparently. And because there's nothing to talk about, nothing really going on, I decided, fuck it, man. Let's bring back another forgotten footballers. Why not? It's always good to shoot up some of that. Shoot up some of that good nostalgia. You know how it goes. Today we're going to be taking a look at some of my favorite English Premier League English players that just kind of came and went over the years. And in a league that's so full of talent, like it's honestly it makes sense. Like some guys just kind of come and go, but every once in a while you'll get a season or two out of someone that's just absolutely ridiculous. And if you're a fan like me, if you're watching consistently, those things bring back good memories. And for honestly all of these players, there was a huge amount of potential on the table. And so I just think they're all pretty fascinating stories in their own right. Let's go ahead and get into it, starting with honestly one of the greatest what if stories in the entire sport, at least in the modern history, Jack Wilshere. His nickname was the English Iniesta, and so I feel like that tells you basically everything you need to know about how this guy played and especially what he brought to the game at his best. He had this technical ability that was super uncommon for English players, especially midfielders during that era of kind of the early 2010s. He was able to change the tempo of a match like in an instant from 0 to 100, just beating players 1v1, finding a quick pass through the lines. Like he unlocked games in an instant. He had a great eye for goal and occasionally scored some absolute bangers, and he also showed some really strong physicality for someone of his age for a very brief period of time. His goals and assist record, it's not really painting the whole picture of what this player represented. I think his best season was like 3 goals and 4 assists or something. That's not at all what this player was about. And had some of the circumstances that we're going to get into not come up in the modern game with the, high tempo transitional style that we see a lot of teams playing, the importance of having good technical ability in midfield, the guy would have been an absolute world-class player. He would have been one of the best in the world. His career got off to a flying start at Arsenal, which was honestly a perfect club for a player like him to develop with that creative quality and just that aesthetically pleasing game that he had. It was such a perfect fit. Unfortunately, after his first full season at Arsenal at I believe just like 19 years old, he had a serious ankle sprain which required he had a serious ankle sprain which required that's a tough one. He had a serious ankle sprain which required surgery, and honestly, that was kind of the beginning of the end. That was the first domino in a long line of injuries for Jack Wilshere. He genuinely could not go a full season without some sort of injury, and that start-stop nature of things, like it just really hindered his development, took away his confidence, and slowly we just started to see the player that we once looked at as a wonder kid kind of unravel over a course of 5-ish, 10-ish years. But I just want to highlight like how absolutely brilliant this guy was, and I don't think there's any match that better explains that than the match against Barcelona in the Champions League, where they would eventually go on to lose the tie, but they won the first match, the first leg of that, and he was absolutely critical in that match, just running up and down the pitch with the ball, finding brilliant passes, making some really strong challenges as well. Like he just did a little bit of everything in that match. He was absolutely brilliant, and he was either like 18 or 19 at the time. Like to come on the scene and at that stage against that Barcelona team, which was just absolutely full of legends. It really spoke to the quality that he had. And a lot of players can have a good match, but having a great match, a man of the match performance against that Barcelona team in that era in the Champions League, I mean, that's a At his age, man, that's unbelievably special. And it's such a robbery that that moment is kind of the defining moment of Jack Wilshere's career, because that should have been the start of many, many match winning, man of the match defining performances where he was just, going on a tear. As I said, he should have been one of the best players in the world. And I feel like that unraveling that I spoke about earlier, I first really, really noticed it when he took his first loan spell with Bournemouth in around like 2017. It was just not the same player. And at that lower level, no disrespect to Bournemouth, but the drop off from Arsenal, I felt like that was a chance for him to kind of like, all right, I still got it, you know what I mean? And he didn't still got it, unfortunately. And then as more and more technically proficient English players start to come up in the game, especially throughout like the mid-late 2010s, that starts to become really common to see, actually, like players like Phil Foden, Jack Wilshere, Jadon Sancho, and there's so many more that I'm probably forgetting off the top of my head right now, but that profile became pretty common in England, and even in some of the midfielders, like, guys like Madison and Mount, like they took over those attacking midfield spaces. And so it's just, he kind of came and went. Like the spaces for him in the national team setup at other big clubs, like he was quickly replaced with other players. And as much as it sucks to say, and as much as I have a lot of respect for those other players, maybe Grealish comes close, but honestly, I'm not sure if anyone else has that same magic, especially as a pure eight that Jack Wilshere had at his best. I mean, that was a special thing to watch, and it, genuinely, still to this day, such a unique thing for an English midfielder. I guess Jude Bellingham is kind of reshaping that mold, but even then, he feels more in the kind of archetype of like the Lampard, Gerrard kind of a style, all action, all out midfielder. That elite technician that, that this guy, I don't know if we've seen it truly in the proper sense since Jack Wilshere. It's a damn shame. It's a damn shame. Next up, we got another guy that injuries really, really held him back from the potential that he could have had, and that's Daniel Sturridge. And I feel like he does still get talked about a decent amount, especially recently. I know he's on one of the talk shows now as a host. He's someone that will stay relevant to some extent, but he does not get the proper credit that he deserves. And as a Manchester United fan, it's brutal to be saying that some of this stuff, but damn, man, like he was a truly, truly special player at his best. He had a left foot that was genuinely a gift from whatever you believe in. That shit was special. He came up through Chelsea's youth academy and did pretty well there early on in his career, but the real moments that most people remember him for, including myself, is his time at Liverpool, and especially that season where him, Suarez, Sterling, and Coutinho were linking up and just, God. In that 2013-2014 season that I'm speaking about, he scored 21 goals with 7 assists in right around like 2,200 minutes. He was averaging right around a goal contribution every 81 minutes. Absolutely ridiculous. And this is that season that Luis Suarez, unfortunately, scored himself 31 goals with 12 assists. And so, I mean, that Liverpool attack between the two of them primarily is the two main focal points of that team. Just, man, again, I'm not a fan of the team, and so I was watching it through gritted teeth. But when you go back and watch the highlights with time to kind of separate yourself as a fan, it really is special football to watch. It's beautiful stuff, man. It really is. You look at that star-studded, amazing Liverpool attack from that season, and you start thinking about those players. Luis Suarez, okay, went on to win a treble at Barcelona, one of the best strikers of all time. Cool, he did his thing. Felipe Coutinho also got a huge transfer to Barcelona. Didn't quite work out, but still definitely had his role in helping Bayern to win their Champions League. And overall, you could say, transfer fee aside, had a relatively successful career. And then you got Raheem Sterling, which again, how many trophies did he win at Manchester City? Too many to count, unfortunately. Got another big deal back to Chelsea, and I mean, he's been doing pretty well there so far, on and off, but he's been doing decent. And so all of three of those guys, to varying degrees, but all three of those guys, you can absolutely say, had very successful careers at the top level and are certainly elite footballers, again, to varying degrees for sure, but very successful careers. And then there's Sturridge. And that's the thing where it's like, damn, what the hell happened? It's the same story as Wilshere, honestly. It's injuries. In the 2014-2015 season, he had an injury-riddled season, ankle problems galore, and then it was just surgeries, missing minutes. He only made over 10 appearances in a single season once after the 2015-16 season. And even when he was on the pitch, he didn't have that same explosive acceleration that once made him such an undefendable player. And all of this kind of parallels with the arrival of Jurgen Klopp, who brings in a very athleticism and press-driven system, which is something that Sturridge at the time was just not durable enough, not built for. And that sliding door shut, his moment passed, and the team moved on. He had to move on, and he was never the same player after that. And I'll be honest, there are times that I do think that, like, what would have happened had the injuries not, imagine Sturridge on that right wing in that Klopp system, cutting in onto his left foot, like with the energy and the pace and the athleticism that he had. If the injuries hadn't took that away, like, fuck, man, what a special player that we could have gotten to watch. And it's a bummer, man. It really is a bummer. I think he could have gone on to genuinely be one of the all-time greats in the Premier League. I mean, he was just getting started. And again, look at what the other guys in that team went on to accomplish. So I don't think it was a fluke season. I think he's a damn good player that had some really shitty luck. And here I am having to talk about him in my garage now. Isn't that something? That being said, I do want to leave it on the fact that, I'm happy as hell to see that he's getting into the media side of things, still putting himself out there within the game. I'm really happy to see that he's not jaded, I want nothing but good things for Sturridge in his retirement. Same thing with Wilshere and with the next player that I'm going to talk about in this video, who I don't think is actually retired yet, but definitely walking that line very closely, and that is Ross Barkley. Just remembered that he actually late signing in the window, Luton Town. So, that's something. But so I genuinely feel like people forget just how good Ross Barkley was, because when he got his move to a top club, he never really could figure it out. Like with these other two players I talked about in the video, it's very established amongst football fans, especially Premier League fans, that Wilshere and Sturridge could have been those fucking dudes. They could have been the guys for that generation of England had injuries not taken place. Ross Barkley's one of those ones where it's like a really good test of like how much football did you really watch, because this dude, oof, when he was cooking, he was, oof. In 2015-2016, for an Everton team that finished 11th and was honestly awful besides Ross Barkley and a couple other players, he put up 8 goals and 8 assists. Cooking. Now, I know those numbers don't necessarily jump off the page as being anything crazy, but at least for my lifetime watching football, the last 10-ish years, Everton have been a team that traditionally tend to struggle with creativity. They don't tend to have like flairful, flairful. I'll roll with it. They don't tend to have like flairful, exciting, skillful players. They just, it's very gritty, very, it's that Brexit bowl, mate. I told myself I wasn't gonna do a fucking accent. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. To anyone, if I am so sorry. But genuinely though, like, this is a team that I wouldn't, and I feel maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see them as a team that's known for having super great attacking play, fun to watch attacking play. It tends to be pretty gritty. And with Ross Barkley, he just wasn't like that. He could glide past defenders with ease. He could set up players with both feet, score goals, score goals, scoring goals with both feet, assists with both feet. He was super technically proficient. Not the fastest player, but pretty stocky for his position. It was definitely a player who was tough to knock off the ball. And in that 2015-2016 season I was speaking about earlier, he had over 3 dribbles a game and 1.5 key passes. I mean, the guy genuinely was doing it all from a creative point of view. And he continued that excellent form at Everton into the following season, which then attracted the attention of Chelsea, and that's where things really hit the shitter for Ross Barkley's career. So first of all, you have an absolutely brutal hamstring injury that keeps him out for a whole huge portion of the season and really stunts his ability to like assert himself into that team. And then on top of that, it was just always kind of an awkward fit. Like that Chelsea midfield was pretty stacked at the time. You had players like Cesc, N'Golo, and then later on they even signed Jorginho. And so it felt like the profile of midfielders that they were going for wasn't necessarily his role. And that like kind of weird attacking but not super attacking midfield position that like guys like Mason Mount, for example, would get a lot of minutes in. He just never fit in like off of the wing and stuff like that. He was better in the 10, like a really out and out 10. And he just didn't really get a chance to play in that position as much for Chelsea. And it just didn't work out. It was not the right fit. It was not the right timing. Injuries on top of all that. Like, God, what do you expect from the guy? And ultimately, that time at Chelsea kind of just dwindled into nothing. There was some unsuccessful loan spells in there, I'm pretty sure. And then he ended up playing at Aston Villa, and that was probably the last time we saw like some version of like a peak Ross Barkley, because him and Jack Grealish linking up during the COVID lockdown football and empty stadiums and stuff, that shit was magical. That was some of the most fun memories that I personally have from that terrible time in everyone's life around the world. They were something special to watch together. Obviously, mostly a lion's share of that was carried on the shoulders and the magnificent calves of Jack Grealish. But don't count out the contribution that other creative players like Todd McGinn, you know the one, and Ross Barkley, guys like that had to also play in that team for him to be effective, and especially that link up with Ross Barkley, with him playing that kind of floating 10 role. Beautiful. But that was kind of it. He would return to Chelsea for another season, didn't really play any minutes, went over to France for a bit, played with Nice, I believe. Again, didn't really play too much. It wasn't really anything significant. And now he is back with Luton Town, of course, as I mentioned earlier, which weird fit. It's going to be tough for him to assert himself in a team that's going to struggle so much for possession. It's kind of the same thing I was talking about with Tahith Chong if you watch the transfers video. But hopefully he's able to cook up something, give us some moments to at least smile and say, hey, I remember when, because that's what so much of sports is about to me. I love the nostalgia crack. Hopefully y'all got a good hit today. That's all I got for y'all. I'm not going to hold you any longer. Like if you liked, comment if you have anything to say, sub if you want to see more, and I'll catch y'all nerds later. Peace.